Thank you. So I take the opportunity to thank the Department of Antiquity for its support, and especially, of course, the staff of the Museum of Paphos. And I would like also to thank all our colleagues working in Paphos for sharing their results. And of course, Anthea Garrod, the volunteers on the excavation, MI students who are working hard under the sun. So we are leaving from Paphos to Nea Paphos, 15 kilometers to the northwest, on a site where has been founded in the last quarter of the 4th century, a new city around a harbor. So there is still a debate to know who created this city. Was it Nicocles, the last king of the kingdom of Paphos, or Ptolemy, the satrapus and then king of Egypt? You all know that Paphos is a UNESCO site since 1980, but the site is still having a tremendous pressure from developers. It is the reason why in 2007, Dr. Pavlos Forensos, who was then director of the Department of Antiquities, proposes to work on Fabrika Hill on the northeast of the ancient city. Indeed, this hill, which is one of the two heights of Paphos with the hill of the lighthouse, remained outside the archaeological park and was not properly protected. So since 2008, when we created the French archaeological mission, we led three programs, the third one being still in progress in collaboration with the University of Warsaw, and especially Professor Mlynarczyk. We will see that later. So you can see on this aerial picture that Fabrika Hill is just to the northeast of the site. And we are still, in fact, looking for evidence of a grid of the ancient city on this hill. So one of our aims is to try to precise the urbanism of the city on this hill. I'm not going to speak about the transition from the end of the Cypriot kingdom to the beginning of the Hellenistic city, since I have already written some thoughts about this subject in a recent paper in honor of Professor Mlynarczyk. But I'm going so to focus on the transition from the Hellenistic to the Roman period. So we are first evidence of this transition in the quarries. So most of the quarries which has been identified by my colleague Jean-Claude Bessac in Fabrika are underground quarries belonging to the Hellenistic period. But some of these quarries has been reused as cultic places in early Roman times. We are currently working in two of these spaces, underground chambers, and we are now, it is now possible to say that we have a very thin layer of Hellenistic use, and then after a thick fill, there is a floor which has been perfectly preserved, which is from the early Roman period. A large Roman quarry has been identified to the northwest of Fabrika Hill, above the filling of a Hellenistic town, which has been totally destroyed, or partly at least on Fabrika, at the end of the 1st century BC by one of the earthquakes which happened around 15 BC. Here is this quarry seen from the east of Fabrika to the northwest, and we're going to come back in this area a little later. The transition from Hellenistic to Roman Paphos could be approached also when we study the city wall evidence. You all know the reconstitution of a trace of the city wall by Kyriakos Nicolaou. but it was still difficult to know where was the wall on the northeast limits of the city. Recently, Dr. Raptu was able to identify part of the eastern rampart on the eastern side of the theater, and where he found a part of the rampart and the tower connected to the wall, which is dated to the Hellenistic period. To the north of this trench and evidence, we all knew the imprints of the wall, and then we had no evidence northern. But a few years ago, on the edge of the northeast part of Fabrika Hill, we found the remains of a wall, which is the foundation of the first layer of the rampart in the northeast part of the hill. You can see it better from the south. It is made with large blocks, and we have a small sally port, which is protected by a large tower, which has collapsed, in fact, down to the cliff. Part of the wall is has been destroyed probably by an earthquake at the end of the 1st century BC, but we have been able to find some shards in the fill of the wall as well as in the foundation trench, and all the shards are around 150 BC from the second half of the 2nd century BC. So we have a connection between, in fact, the wall from the top of the hill to the wall which is known below. Part of the wall was totally looted, and we have only imprints of the wall on the top of Fabrika. And we realized that many ashlar blocks of the eastern rampart were in fact reused in Roman buildings. We can find the same dimensions of the ashlar blocks in the vaulted roof of a Roman cistern, as well as slabs, which has been used to cover the channel of the aqueduct, which is partly underground when it is reaching the surface of the bedrock. And on this aerial picture, you can see that the Roman aqueduct supplying the Roman cistern is in fact parallel to the remains of the eastern rampart on the top of the hill. So in fact, in the early Roman time, they just looted and reused the ashlar blocks from the city wall to build the Roman buildings. If you go back to the north of Fabrika Hill, we have different elements of the transition from the Hellenistic to the Roman Paphos. So we have already noticed this large Roman quarry, but we are now going to climb the remains of the cliff to the northeast limit of the hill, so just opposite to the mall. So here is the open-air Roman quarry and the remains of the cliff, where we have been able to observe the very scanted remains of the northern rampart. So here on the top of the cliff, you have some remains of quarrying activities, but it is not only quarrying activities. In fact, it is the remain of the fill of the northern wall. And you see that the bedrock has been leveled. And in fact, we have imprints, very smooth ones, of the ashlar blocks of the two faces of the wall. If you see that from the other side, we excavated and found the scanted remains of the fill of the wall, which is made of the same terra rossa clay we had on the eastern rampart, and with some ships of stones. So if you compare the feature of the northern rampart and the western one, you can see that it is almost the same. The bedrock is level, and then after 50 centimeters from the edge of the bedrock, you have the face of the wall. We have also the ditch in front of the northern rampart. And now on the exact line of the wall to the east of it, we found a few years ago the remains of a Roman mansion. This Roman mansion, I'm not going to speak about it now, but we have enlightened the southern wing and started to enlighten the eastern one, and a large courtyard. This Roman building is built above a Hellenistic quarry, as well as above pre-Roman walls, which are Hellenistic ones, or built against these Hellenistic walls. We noticed that many ashlar blocks of large size have been reused in the walls of this Roman building. And you can notice here on your left that there is a line of very nice ashlar blocks, which are thin ones. And in fact, it is the blocks which were used for the first layer of the elevation of the city wall. We have them in two different parts of the city wall in Paphos. We have also evidence of single ashlar blocks which have been looted probably from the wall, which has been dismantled, and which were waiting to be used in overbuilding. And in the courtyard of a Roman house, we have imprints of missing blocks, which are exactly on the line of the northern wall. So if we go back to this aerial picture, in fact, we made geophysical surveys, and Christophe Benesch from the CNRS was able to distinguish lines which are perpendicular to the northern rampart and which are north to out of the city, of the Hellenistic city, and which could belong to Hellenistic tombs. And we know that some tombs were found in this area when and destroyed when they made the road. To the north of this road, in a Turkish plot, on the Turkish plot, we also noticed parallel and perpendicular lines to the Roman mansions. And so it seems that the Roman town extended towards to the north, and that at that time, the northern Hellenistic rampart was dismantled, so that the northern limit of the Hellenistic city has been, in fact, suppressed, cancelled, because the Roman city was larger, extended towards the north. So we have also the transition from the Hellenistic to the Roman phase, which is obvious with the first wall we found in 2008. It is what I call the analemma wall. It is a revetment wall, which is in fact retaining the thick fill of earth, which is plenty of Hellenistic shards, nothing later. And we made a trench in front of this wall, and in the foundation trench of this wall, the latest shards we found was from the last quarter of the 1st century BC. And in fact, this wall is the real transition between the Hellenistic city, which has been destroyed by the earthquake of 15 BC, and the reconstruction of a Roman city thanks to Augustan findings. To finish, I would like to share with you thoughts about the transition from the Hellenistic to the Roman period in the Northwest Gate area. I have already presented in a paper some observation on this area. So we have the imprints of the western wall with a rocky bridge giving access to the gate. And the observation I made with Jean-Claude Bessac could allow us to show that the ditch in front of the wall was protected by a protechisma fore wall in English. In fact, we also observed that this fore wall was cut by two, even perhaps free access to the sea here, and which are now blocked by soil and by a rough wall. And of course, it will be very interesting now to excavate at least the access which is blocked by the soil. And I proposed so that the ditch, in fact, was in seawater during the Hellenistic period to shelter boats or to repair some boats. Over the time, the ditch was silted up, and it has been so abandoned, and it became a dry ditch. And it seems that the transition, in fact, it is in Roman times. The ditch has been partly filled, and you can see on these pictures that the towers, which has been built in the 2nd century AD, according to Sophocles Agisavas, are founded very higher than the Hellenistic ones. So, in fact, above the fill of the ditch. So I have to go to the end. I'm going to hand over to Professor Jolanda Mlinarczyk, who is going to present first results of the temple and its surrounding on Fabrika Hill, with new evidence of transition from the Hellenistic to the Roman period. Thank you for your attention.